this is T.R. Anand, board member of TiE Bangalore and chairperson of the Matrix Forum. And it's a real pleasure to introduce the webinar of today. And this webinar is being brought to you under the cooperation and partnership between Algorand Foundation and TiE Bangalore. So it's a real pleasure to start off the first of a series of events during the course of 2024 that we will be bringing to you under this partnership. I will briefly introduce TiE and the Matrix Forum and thereafter hand over the stage to the panelists today. May I have the slides, please? Very quickly, I will be introducing TiE Bangalore and Matrix Forum. I will not introduce the Algorand Foundation because our panelists during the course of their sessions will introduce the Algorand Foundation in far more detail than I can ever do that. Okay, TiE, the Indus Entrepreneurs Bangalore, is of the entrepreneurs, for the entrepreneurs, and by the entrepreneurs. It's the world's largest community of entrepreneurs network that we have across 60 countries, over 4,000 charter members, 30,000 plus charter plus associate members. And we've been present in India for over 25 years now. We connect entrepreneurs to the seasoned, the entrepreneurs from budding stage to the growth stage focus. Our motto is fostering entrepreneurship, and we do this through the 5 pillars of education, networking, incubation, mentoring, and funding. Today's session, as you can see, will fall under the education program, and you will get a lot of insights into the topic of today. Next, please. TiE Bangalore, this is our silver jubilee year, and we are really happy to have enabled the thousands of entrepreneurs within Bangalore, and it's clearly the startup hub and innovation capital of not just the country, but also in this part of the world. Matrix Forum is a part of the deep tech capability forum of startups. We have over 2,000 startups, and this is our 10th year. It's one of the largest, longest running forums of TiE Bangalore. Next, please. And what we do is essentially, it's a think tank initiative. And what we do is we are ahead of the technology in terms of sensing what are the newest technologies that are there and being able to bring in the expertise and the directions in those technologies for startups. So we started out as the IoT forum in 2014 when IoT was still new, and then graduated from IoT to AR, VR, and computer vision, edge computing, and so on and so forth. And today, we have transitioned into the matrix of new technologies, including quantum computing, Gen AI, and so on. What we do is essentially, we are not an incubator, we are not just a pure investor, but we are a community creator. And what we do is we bring together all the communities that are required, and the most important things, mentors, investors, and the enterprise test beds, etc., that will help early adoption of technology. And today we stand as the foremost forum to enable Make from India for the world. Next slide, please. Very quickly, what we essentially do is summarize here, and I've already spoken about it. So basically, we organize events, we have advisories, we generate policy papers, and we have a whole host of alumni over 10 years. And these include the award winners, companies which we have recognized very early on. And in Bangalore, people will recognize Sun Mobility, Aether Energy, Pneumocity, etc. These were early winners of the Matrix Awards, and they have gone on to become successful entrepreneurs. I mentioned this because you as audience can participate in any of these activities. Next, please. Here are the different task forces that and the special interest groups that we have. I'm not going to read all of them. I'm just showing this to show that from the audience, if you want to be a volunteer and contribute to both yourself and to the community here, please join us, and you will get the email ID in the next couple of slides, and you could do that. Okay. So connect with us at matrix@tiebangalore.org. We will put out this in the chat box too. And either you could be an enterprise sponsor, you can be a partner, you can be an active SIG member in your individual capacity. You can also be a speaker and panelist, because we encourage people to come out and share their unique experiences and their unique capabilities. I'm coming towards the end of what I wanted to do to introduce. This is a special slide which we normally don't talk about, but the TiE Global Summit is coming for the first time to Bangalore in December this year. It is a summit of all the TiE chapters across the world, and this is going to be a celebration of entrepreneurship between 8th and 12th December. The Karnataka government is a state partner. We are also supported by a lot of central government institutions and startup institutions. It's going to be a festival of entrepreneurship, and look out for more announcements from TiE during the course of the next few months. With that, I finished the introduction of TiE Bangalore and Matrix Forum. It's a real pleasure to bring today's session. And here are the speakers. Just for your information, we always want to bring in the best of expertise from across the world. And it's a real pleasure to introduce Nikhil Varma from Algorand Corporation. He's speaking to us from New Jersey. And Professor Nikhil Varma spends his time between US and India. He's an academician and an industry advisor with a focus on decentralized business models. Thank you, Professor Nikhil. It's been a real pleasure to interact with you during the past few months. We also have Christine Mohan from Algorand Foundation, who's a VP of Community and Ecosystem Success. And she is, I believe, based out of Malaysia. Of experience in launching blockchain and emerging tech, digital media, and nonprofit entities. Thank you, folks from Algorand. We have Meenu Sarin, who is moderating this program today, and she is the founder of Blockchain Hustle, which is a podcast across YouTube, Podbean, Audible, Apple, etc. She has been connected with the technology industry for many, many years, and has a deep interest in technology on how businesses and entrepreneurs can leverage it. And Meenu lives in Singapore. So we truly have a global set of panelists, and we have a lot of you and us audience here in India. So with this, over to you, Meenu, to moderate the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Thanks. So thanks for all that introduction about the TiE and the Matrix Forum, as well as giving a brief introduction on the two panelists today, Christine and Nikhil. Before I start, Christine and Nikhil, both of you, if you could just give a little bit more detail, if you'd like to, about yourself, as well as a bit about Algorand Protocol, Algorand Foundation. And then we would start on the webinar, and I will just go through that structure and then the question answers accordingly.
Okay, I'll start. Christine Mohan. I manage the community team and ecosystem success with Algorand Foundation. My background is in tech for the last 20 to 25 years. I've been both on the startup side. I was at a startup actually in Boston that was acquired by the New York Times company. So I then got crash landing experience in corporates, went to Wall Street Journal for a number of years, worked in web operations, and then moved into different emerging tech, search, social media, got very interested in blockchain, and then became co-lead and co-founder of a media platform built on consensus. Spent some time at Polkadot doing a range of different things, including launching the Polkadot token, and then came to Algorand. So definitely experience on both the startup and corporate side, and have seen the different ways you can adopt new technologies into a large corporate. And I'll let Nikhil introduce himself and a little bit about Algorand as well.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nikhil Varma. I've been in this space of technology for the last 25 years. Was an entrepreneur myself in Canada, started my own company. When I talk to people in the industry, I always say I went to the dark side because I went to academia. And when I talk to people in the academia, I came to the bright side. So it depends on who's listening. I did my PhD from HEC Montreal and then moved over to New Jersey. That is when I fell in love with blockchain. I was very much a AI business process design person. And ever since, I've not done anything except for blockchain. In fact, sometimes I joke that even I dream about blockchain. So I've been working in this space, blockchain space, from since 2016, and mostly talking about business model transformation. How a business should transform into decentralized? What are the different problems that a business faces? And I've taught in IIT Delhi as a guest professor. I also teach in Malda University, where I talk about supply chain and blockchain. Very recently, for the last 2 years, I've been working with the Algorand Foundation in India, and as a tech lead in India, where we work with different kinds of in different levels, right from students to industries, but talking about the whole decentralization mantra, and how decentralization was actually designed to help people at the grassroots level. And we've been getting a lot of good traction in India. A lot of interesting things happened in India last year, where we had our first Impact Summit. Great companies, great entrepreneurs, and a lot of enterprises showing a lot of interest towards decentralization.
Okay. Thanks, Nikhil. And can you guys elaborate a little bit about the Algorand protocol, the blockchain, as well as the foundation?
Sure. Algorand is what we call as the third generation blockchain platform. Blockchain has evolved over the years. Some people are still stuck with the Bitcoin and the carbon footprint, but then we moved ahead of that with different protocols, trying to kind of solve different kinds of mindsets, having different kinds of mindset. So with the advent of smart contracts, which was first introduced by Ethereum, which I call as the second generation blockchain platform, uh, you know, it opened up a lot of avenues of automation, decentralization, starting businesses, starting kind of automating processes, setting up, creating tokens, which would create your business logic. But then when blockchain platforms started looking at, the whole enterprise market, as to what exactly an enterprise needs. An enterprise needs more consistency. Enterprise needs to be able to have less and less of security. If you actually look at the protocol like Ethereum, you have to deploy a smart contract and to be able to create tokens, and that becomes a big contentious issue of security. When we look at a platform like Algorand and third generation platforms, you don't have to deploy a smart contract to be able to create tokens. And that becomes a big benefit for organizations. So the third generation blockchain platform is what Algorand is all about. This was created by MIT professor Silvio Micali. The objective was to solve the blockchain trilemma of decentralization, scalability, and security. And we've been working towards getting more and more decentralized as a platform. The By reducing complexities, by reducing transaction costs, you will be able to encourage organizations to come into these kind of platforms, and that's what Algorand aspires to be. And that's what we do every day to be able to help enterprises adopt our platform.
Okay, great. And a bit about the foundation part as to how they are different from the protocol technology platform.
Sure, I could take that a bit. Similar to how a lot of blockchain protocols are set up. The tech team is usually part of, in our case, it's Algorand Inc. The core developers focused on building and enhancing and iterating the platform and all the tools, feature sets, capabilities. And the foundation is almost like the consumer customer facing, whether that's a community team, whether that's partners, funding. We work with accelerators on the foundation side, working to bring in certainly developers. So developer adoption, developer tooling, developer relations, all of those functions reside in the foundation. And it's a very global team. And it's a team that's really focused this year. We have quite a new suite coming in, and including the ability to integrate Python. So that's a whole new audience for us in terms of developers, and a very exciting growth base for us. So I think 2024, you'll be hearing a lot from Algorand.
Awesome. Thanks, Christine and Nikhil. So I'll get on to the webinar structure then, because the title, of course, is the enterprise adoption and where can blockchain deliver value. And that's a pretty vast topic. So we thought that, sorry, we could just maybe make it as put two categories for today, just so that it's not very cramped and we can take everything at a good pace. So we'll be covering two topics. And in the first one, I would like us to cover about discussion on the pain points which are faced by the organizations. Because any solution here, we are starting with addressing a certain pain point. What are the pain points which are faced by the organizations, and how blockchain can help enterprises to address those pain points, rather than, just jumping onto the bandwagon because that's the hype or that's the trendy topic to be in. So let's talk about the pain points and where blockchain, agnostic of any platform or any technology or protocol, where it could help improve efficiency, enhance the productivity, etc. Right? Give a solution. And in the second category, I would like us to discuss something on outlining a roadmap for the enterprises. So let's say the enterprises have, what should I say? They have taken up some pain points and they have said that, okay, fine, blockchain solution seems to be the optimal one for us. Now, what do we do next? How do I select the most optimal blockchain platform or a solution for my needs? So what we can go through this is then just an outline of the roadmap for the enterprise adoption of these blockchain solutions, which I would say we can put it as 4 subcategories. One would be identifying the use cases, followed by what are the key considerations that one needs to keep in mind while selecting. Then thirdly, we could cover something on the key challenges which are faced in the blockchain adoption. And then we could follow it up with, let's say, an implementation strategy. And I think that would cover the things in a sequence, that is the pain points faced by the organizations and then the roadmap for the adoption. And then later on, if time permits, or maybe in another webinar, we could talk about some specific use case in detail and about the protocol or the foundation. So if that's fine with everyone, then we could start with that. Is it okay with you, Christine and Nikhil?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And a special thing for the audience here is, if you do have any questions during the chat, just during the session, just put your questions in the chat box. And if you have anything specific, like if you want a specific panelist to respond to it, just mention that person also. And in the end of the session, then we'll be taking up the question and answers from the audience. And then I'll be looking into the chat window to take up the questions. So just keep putting in your questions in the chat box as we go around on the session. Okay, so let me start with the first one, which is on the pain points faced by the organizations and how blockchain technology can help. So if you folks can just take a few examples and what are the different pain points which are faced by the entities today, and where optimally blockchain could help in a very, it can help give you an optimal solution. So maybe we could start with that, giving a few examples or wherever, how you guys want to start.
Sure. Maybe I can start, Christine, and then.
Sure.
So before we get into that, just want to kind of mention one thing that, if we need to kind of remind ourselves as to what was the purpose of blockchain
Yeah.
and what exactly decentralization brings in. The reason why we need more and more intermediaries in any kind of a business process is because of the lack of trust and also lack of transparency. And if we are able to kind of unpack that and see why organizations are suffering in the current times, it is mostly because they do not have a very transparent process. And that lack of transparency in the organization could be because of their fear of, somebody getting to know their business processes, a fear of a competitor actually following that whole process. And that results in a lot of investments by organization just to be able to create that element of trust. Yeah. And that element of trust that it's a lot of advertising, a lot of marketing, but then one small thing, with all this social media and everybody becoming a reporter nowadays, fact finding, all kinds of things, one small thing can actually have a huge impact on the branding of the organization. Just a simple example of how Nike got into a lot of trouble with soccer balls over here when they got to know that they were sewn by underage kids in Pakistan. Now, this has been a challenge and problem with organizations, and organizations have been investing a lot to be able to make sure that they get to know more and more about their whole supply chain. Very recently I was in Assam, and I was told that Assam tea, which which I think all of us cherish a lot in India, and I was born and brought up in Assam, so it's kind of a special place for me. There is more Assam tea that is sold in the international market than what is produced in Assam. So there is Chinese tea coming into the international market under the name of Assam tea just because Assam tea has a branding. Now, how do we now this might not be one single enterprise problem, this might be an industry problem, but enterprises playing in that space get to have lots of issues because of the competitive challenges. Like if there is an enterprise, if there is a company which is able to sell things which is at a much lower price as compared to something which is authentic and costs much more, then you're out of the international market. So how do we kind of create trust? And by creating transparency, how can we create trust and show that this is an authentic product? I think that is one of the core problems which most enterprises are looking to solve in the current times. And that is what blockchain solves so well. That is where blockchain brings in so much of trust with decentralization, especially when things flow across so many different boundaries. When you are able to trace the origin of a product by a simple scan of things, when you are able to see that this product that I'm buying is actually fair trade instead of just having a stamp of fair trade, when you are able to have inter-organizational trust. We have so many different companies trying to solve that problem. We have a company called FDP Connect based out of Hyderabad. They are looking to make sure that how can we make sure that the bill of lading that gets transferred from one party to the other is has all the authentic information, and the ownership transfer actually happens, because there is so much of fraudism happening in those spaces. I think these are some very interesting areas which organizations are looking outside their bounds. And then when you look inside the bounds of an organization, organizations would be looking at data security and integrity. They could automate certain processes with supply chain efficiencies, in fact, within the bounds of their organization. Any kind of fraudulent activities can be easily handled. Identity management within the organization, incentivization of people. So the options are many. It's for our own canvas. It's like empty canvas right now. It's for us to find out what exactly we would like to solve over here. But from a pain point perspective, again coming back to your initial question, I feel the whole idea of decentralization is to be able to bring in distributed trust, to be able to make sure when we don't have trust amongst each other, how can blockchain be the technology mediated trust?
And these are very radical ideas. I think some of in addition to, the technology, which is quite innovative, when you look at the concepts of decentralization and governance, These are new. These are, you know, this shift they talk about from Web 2 to Web 3, the ability with, and the mission of Web 3 being the ability to have more control over your data, over your identity, over all these things are very, very important, both to consumers, to customers. And as you said, consumers are expecting it with 24/7 news, with social media. The access points are so much greater across an organization. And so the customer base really is starting to expect this. And it's really up to now the enterprise to see where, you know, what their risk level is, what their comfort level is, and how, you know, it's a bit antithetical for corporates to be decentralized, but where can they begin to enter into this dialogue really with suppliers, with partners, whether that's through supply chain, as we said, identity management, all of these elements. But it really does start there. And it is really a sea change. And even in the same, I've been in blockchain 5 or 6 years, and it has been quite quick, but still a long way to go. But exciting to see the enterprises are really starting to see the benefits.
Yeah, actually, it's when you talk about the Web3 and the content creators or the data, there's a lot of data, which are your digital assets which are created. And who has access to that? Who can monetize on that? The identity management that you folks had mentioned, that really comes into the picture, especially when you talk about the Web3, right? So, because we're talking about identification, we're talking about the authorization, and then checking that, you know, it's not a fraudulent person who's having access to your digital asset there.
Right. And also, how is that data stored? So whether it's a social media monopoly or whether it's your healthcare company, your insurer, your bank. And again, this is where blockchain can help in terms of secure databases, in terms of the way that how it's accessed. And also, again, consumers are looking for that transparency and visibility into their database, into their data. They want to know it's safe. They also want to be able to potentially share different parts of their identity when they want to, in a case-by-case basis. And most of our interactions with most of our the businesses we work with every day do not allow us to either monetize our own data or be selective about it. So all of these things are, again, possible through identity protocols on blockchain, and it is one of the most exciting growth areas for us.
Yeah, one thing, if I could ask further, because the stuff about transparency, having a decentralized trust, identity management, right? These are the specific features or, features of a blockchain technology. But when we talk about the pain points, right? So specifically zoning into a certain use case or multiple use cases, where are these features being optimally used or can be optimally used? So for example, Nikhil mentioned about supply chain in the beginning, right? So in the supply chain, which part, I guess the blockchain could be used across it, it could complement it, or it could be a complete solution specific to a particular supply chain in a particular technology or a particular vertical. Could you zone into the exact specific, let's say if you pick up supply chain, which could be, what could I say, as one of the questions is also there on the chat box, the best case to deploy within the supply chain for a blockchain technology?
So, I mean, there are different approaches to it. Depends on what the organization wants to achieve. However, I feel that, you know, in my most of the interactions with the organization is looking to build the consumer, the customer, the end customer confidence. And to be able to build the end customer confidence, having a reliable set of data transparently presented over to them is something which I think is the step one. Because if there is, I mean, that's how most organizations get triggered anyways, because if you are able to kind of make sure that I'm going to be addressing your customer better. But once you get into this and you start realizing that, you know, besides just this whole transparency aspect, we will be able to also present, suppose an organization claims that we are a green organization, right? And the aware consumer of today is going to say, yeah, what makes you green? right? Oh, we got this particular certification from blah, blah, blah to be able to be green. And they go and just do a Google search and say, oh, you put $10,000, we'll come in and give you an audit and give you a green certificate, which is basically greenwashing, right? So now, if you are claiming to be green, you really have to demonstrate that you are green. If you're claiming to be sustainable, you have to be sustainable. If you're claiming to be child labor free, fair wages, you have to be able to demonstrate that. So I think that end consumer is definitely something which organizations are very interested in, to be able to kind of be one of their starting points. But I've also seen manufacturing companies where there are multiple suppliers, and when there are multiple suppliers, then it becomes for them a logistical nightmare to be able to kind of manage suppliers, to be able to manage funding, to be able to kind of monitor and the quality of the goods that are coming in. Some companies are looking at, why don't we just deploy smart contracts over there, or make it an open marketplace where we don't have to invest too much on those big suppliers who are anyways integrators. They're not actually suppliers. Why not go to the small person who's not able to have access to me because they are not able to kind of present the kind of bonds and other things that I'm looking for. So that kind of also democratizes the other side of the supply chain also. So these are two sides which most organizations, in my opinion, are looking at as a starting point. Of course, this is and as Christine mentioned, right? I mean, enterprises by their sheer nature cannot be decentralized, but enterprises are looking at avenues where decentralized information or decentralization of certain parts are going to be helpful to them, because at the end of the day, they're a profit-making entity. That's the key. That's the underline here. They're not here to do service. But how can we make profit by good branding? Now, good branding can come in by more transparency. So these are different things that I think enterprises should look at, or are looking at rather.
Because another thing, when you were talking about the supply chain, different suppliers, etc., there was a very well publicized blockchain-based solution from Walmart Canada, if I'm not mistaken, which was a blockchain-based freight tracing or tracking thing, where they get the what should I say, the smart contracts are pulling the live shipment information into the invoices, and because of it's a smart contract. If the terms and the conditions are met, automatically the payment settlement would happen. So what I was looking at is that in case specific examples in the supply chain where one could, I do understand your perspective that this is basis what the organization wants, right? Where they want it, how they want it, etc. But just generically speaking, if supply chain is just one example. There could be several others, let's say in identity management. Perhaps there could be some specific example where you would say that, yeah, blockchain was used here, or it is a very optimal thing here.
Sure, and it's important to remember that for identity, anything could have an identity, right? An object, a machine, a service. So your smart meters, can track into a carbon registry, and there can be, there are parts of identity, including credentials, that have both a corporate role and also a customer role, where you could verify an attribute of yourself. You can put that credential into your digital wallet, through an identity management system that is based on blockchain. And so again, it comes back to freedom and autonomy on the part of the customer, and it's something again that we don't. It's new. Learning how to use digital wallets takes some responsibility. It's a little scary at the beginning to learn how to use it, but again, it's that movement towards. And I think we're seeing. I want to be kind of aspirational here and idealist, that we're seeing a move and a shift towards this control of your destiny, your identity, and a digital wallet is part of that. Credentials are part of that are verified by, and also in the same way, as you said, with shipping and logistics, just the same way that there is a know your customer KYC process, there is also with blockchain a KY, know your cargo, in terms of being able to track where it's been, that it hasn't been tampered with, and that it's actually, getting to where it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, so and could you just perhaps one of you touch? I mean, Nikhil, if I'm not mistaken, you had mentioned about data storage, or Christine, I don't remember which one of you had, but could you just give an example on the data storage and the security, because that's a big ticket item, right?
Sure, I'll take one part of it, and I'm sure Nikhil has many examples too.
Okay, sure.
Coming from a media background, for a while, media companies thought they wanted to be in the data business, right? They really don't want to be, especially with GDPR. And so when you think of something like the New York Times Company or the Wall Street Journal or these large global entities, these databases with the customer information reside in quite a few different departments across the organization. And should someone want to retrieve and delete that information, it is very time intensive, resource intensive, and often practically impossible. And so through blockchain security and storage systems, you're actually making it possible to kind of remove that pain point from an enterprise and get them really focused on the business they want to be in, which is, delivery of trusted journalism. So it's really letting businesses, whatever their industry, just actually in some ways offload and in some ways decentralize that piece and get the data out of the silos, where it also is potential for hacking, right? So I was just reading in preparation for this panel that IBM has come out with this report for data theft and issues, and healthcare is at the top of that list for data theft for like 13 years in a row. So again, medical records, anything that's sensitive personal data is also what they call a honeypot for hackers, right? So how do we remove that risk and help enterprises become more secure, which is both an internal and an external benefit?
Great, thanks. So would you guys like to add on something before I get on to the second one?
Yeah, maybe I could just add one part with regards to, so Christine talked about the security aspect. There is another aspect in data, which is the data integrity. And, blockchain also helps a lot in the data integrity. We have some use cases in India where, we are going to be able to give the genesis of a carbon credit. So how did this carbon credit come about? And what we are doing over there is we are having an IoT system through which we are collecting raw data on a regular basis. And that's stored in a simple storage system. But we are taking a hash of the data and writing the hash, which is the digital signature of the data in the blockchain, which means now this data cannot be manipulated. So that's kind of, besides, because that raw data might not give any kind of any business business logic away, but that raw data can easily be manipulated to be able to generate more carbon credits over a period of time. So this IoT device is sending in data on a periodic basis. I think it's 24 hours. What we are doing is we are just putting a hash and then using this data to be able to generate or claim a carbon credit. So when this carbon credit comes about, we are able to show or demonstrate more trust in that carbon credit, that this is actually coming from data which was secured over a period of time. So there are different things that we can also do besides the security, which is actually, I think, one of the biggest concerns of most organizations. But data integrity brings in this whole transparency aspect also. They're kind of connected concepts.
Yeah, and if I can add on to this, I guess it's also on if the data size is very big, right? So lots of people speak about, let's say, for example, it started with the NFT thing. So blockchain was never built for storage of data. And so because you're talking about the hash, that's what just came to my mind. So people have the actual data, whether it's a contract or XYZ. I'm not talking about the smart contract, but regular, let's say, contracts, right? Companies have. Anything which is big in its data size, data footprint, you could put it wherever it is, and just for the data integrity, have the hash in your blockchain. So you have the best of the two worlds there.
Right. And there is one more thing that we are also looking at to do, and we are still in the process of doing a proof of concept, is we would have representations of the data. So essentially, if I claim that I have a PhD, I would have a representation of that without, so basically kind of leaning towards this whole idea of zero knowledge proof. So I don't need to give you my transcripts or I would love to give you my transcript, but that's a different discussion. But I don't need to give you my personal details to be able to show you something.
Yeah.
So somebody else has validated that.
Hmm.
And in fact, in India, we are looking to integrate that with the DigiLocker. So the DigiLocker is already available to citizens of India, where there are digital signatures provided. But we are trying to provide another level of decentralization on top of that to be able to pull that information over and put it on the blockchain also.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one about, for example, the DigiLocker one that you just mentioned. Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of us don't realize it. I guess most of the people, when you talk general non-tech people, we hear all these terms of decentralization, trust, blah, 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 right? Which by itself is, I'm not kind of not respecting their value. But the point comes is like, when the person that in an enterprise says, okay, fine, this is all good. But how does it and where does it actually apply to me in my business case? So once we have spoken about, yes, the pain points, etc. Let's say I say, okay, fine, now I understand all that stuff. This is my pain point. And yes, the blockchain is a good optimal solution. Now I want to get on to adopting it. So we get on to the next section, which is like, how do I identify, if I'm an enterprise, how do I go about identifying use cases in my organization as to which could be the right candidates for the blockchain solution? How do I identify it's a blockchain is good for this, or I am better off not using a blockchain solution? So do you have anything to shed light on this?
Nikhil, do you want to start?
Yes.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Christine, go ahead, please.
So
Again, I mean,
go ahead.
yeah, sorry, Christine. Go ahead, Christine, you start.
No,
please.
no. You come from. No, you've been. Go for it first, and then I'll add in.
Thank you. So there are two things which we'll have to look at when an organization talks about decentralization. Essentially understanding their business process and what is their pain point. I mean, we have to. This is irrespective of anything. Any business transformation is always triggered by a business looking to kind of solve a pain point. There have been many enterprises that I've discussed where the pain point was not they're addressing their customer process, but addressing inefficiencies within the organization, where they have digitized things, but they don't know what to do with those digitized information, where they are in the process of digitizing, but they don't know how to mobilize it.
Yeah.
And then that could be, I think, a much more easier transformation to do, because there are not too many moving parts here. You will be able to define some KPIs and see the benefits of such processes. But the majority of the organizations would be more interested towards customers. How do I make an impact to my customers? What do I do to be able to make my customers trust me more? How can I minimize? I love marketing, but how do I minimize my marketing dollars and still be able to kind of sustainably have that trust? And that would be my differentiator in the marketplace. So these are, always 2 points which I've seen mostly. However, a recent thing which is very, very interesting, again, that indirectly affects the customer, is this whole idea of ESG reporting. I want to do ESG reporting, and ESG reporting is all over the place. Can you give me some kind of a framework which would be the best practices? And then I can say, I'm not kind of showing you one side of the elephant, but I'm actually talking about the whole elephant as such. So I'm not greenwashing. I'm actually mean what I'm looking to do here. So that's another avenue which we have seen lots of organizations come to us and talk to us about transforming their business processes to blockchain and their starting point of the transformation process.
And to follow on what Nikhil said in terms of the challenge of the enterprise to find new customers or deepen a relationship with the existing customers, maybe they have very thin margins in their business that they're looking for new revenue streams. One specific example we have on Algorand is a business called TravelX, and they are basically, I would say, revolutionizing the airline industry. They have innovated something called basically dynamic inventory. And so they're tokenizing their tickets. They're transforming, they're changing their tickets into digital assets that could be potentially resold. You know, they set up the terms for this through a smart contract, but it really, again, goes back to that autonomy of the consumer, and giving the consumer a little visibility into and a little flexibility. It's providing potentially more revenue for the airline, and also it's you know, how we all know from flying all the price points, and so how do you find some consistency in that, or how do you actually you can't get the seats any bigger or smaller, right? So they're working with some fixed assets here, and this is a way to create a new asset type. And so I think that when that one case study, when you think about where dynamic inventory could be adopted across other industries, it gets quite interesting to see this is a new type of monetization for something that had been fairly traditional. And it's going to be exciting to see where this real world asset tokenization goes. It's a real buzzword for 2024, and we're going to be seeing it more and more across different industries, but certainly travel, great success there so far.
Yeah. Perhaps, I mean, when you talked about the dynamic inventory, another dynamic one was the ticketing one. I'm not talking about the airline tickets, but let's say the tickets to an event, a concert, etc. So NFT started, people started having NFTs also in their tickets. So it's not just a static piece of a digital content or a physical thing. It is something that one could always, it can open up access to other facilities, as well as maybe have some kind of a story about the vendor who for which the ticket is, as to it's more of an engagement to the customer. So the customer journey is taking precedence here. So that was something which I found very interesting. And when you said about the dynamic one, that's triggered into my head.
Right. And it also brings in rewards, loyalty, whether it's miles, whether it's NFT. It's like you said, a deeper relationship. It's a branding. It's becoming, you know, I do think NFTs in the earliest stage were maybe a bit fun, but now we're seeing that it's a real form of you know, content asset ownership. And again, ownership is key to blockchain. And so I think we will see more and more of these types of dynamic value creation. Yes, great example.
And would you guys have some kind of a flow chart or something? So let's say, just to make things easier for an enterprise, when they look at a particular pain point and they want to see if a blockchain solution is an optimal one for that, what are the questions they would ask themselves? And then, you know, like a flow chart going from one step to another. Yes, it helps. Okay, go down to the next step, that it could be a blockchain solution. No, it cannot. So just, you know, so are you aware of something like that? Do you guys have something like that?
Checklist or flow chart? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm taking an easy way out.
Yeah, no, there was some research done in the past which kind of tried to kind of have that flow. And there are certain things like, you know, if an organization, first thing is, if an organization is absolutely not open to bringing in any kind of transparency, I don't know which organization would be, but suppose, I mean, there are still organizations who want to keep things very close to themselves. They say, this is our trade secret. We won't tell you anything that's in there. Even if it is representation, we won't do it. I think then blockchain is not meant for that. Blockchain is to be able to open up things within your organization. So I think I can tell you which organizations would not get into blockchain. I've had a few organizations come in and talk about things like I want to make sure that I'm the only one who's going to be like more of a monopoly kind of a mindset, integration of all the people and procurement. I think those kind of businesses would not be a very blockchain directed businesses. But if you what kind of get to this whole process of how an organization should kind of explore Web3 or blockchain is, first of all, look at any area of efficiency, whatever is your area of inefficiency or any area of impact. You could go either or. When you look at your area of inefficiency, run a small pilot Okay. And in fact, what we call nowadays is not exactly Web3, we call it a Web 2.5 model. A Web 2.5 model is where your front end does not change that much. Essentially, your by the way, blockchain is a back-end revolution, not a front-end revolution. So if I mean, of course, the wallets and other things make it much more, robust. But enterprises are always very resistant to this whole fact that, what do you mean by having my own wallet? So essentially, having a single sign-on, within the single sign-on, you create your wallets in the backend, and then you automate your business processes. So if you are able to move things in the backend first, that should be your first step of transformation. And then slowly that transformation should translate, into standalone wallets and other things. But so far, what I've seen is most enterprises look at optimization, or what we have recommended rather, is that most of enterprises should look at inefficiencies by solving problems in the back end rather than solving problems in the front end.
The front end should be a little bit more of, because it's an interface, it should be just the ease of facilitating or onboarding the external stakeholders onto the blockchain, if I'm correct, right?
That's true. So the so essentially the backend would facilitate these things in the front end, right? If you don't have the right kind of smart contracts deployed, if you don't have the right kind of mechanisms deployed, then you will not be able to bring in more stakeholders into the system. If you don't have everything smart contracts, uh, we are looking at more evolutionary smart contract. That's again a research area again, but coming to ground, a smart contract has to be very clear. It has to be black or white. There is no fuzziness in a smart contract. Like, I feel that I will give you money today. It doesn't work like that. And of course, you could have oracles which could be a human centered. So that could bring in some kind of subjectivity to the smart contracts of the future. But as of now, since there are too many moving parts, you want to make sure that that is more stable. It's much more reliable. It is something which both parties understand where they are getting into, rather than let's the AI play its game or something. We don't want to do that right now. So I feel that uh, uh, the front end side evolves over a period of time, but the back end is where the revolution is. The back end is where you should look at the transformation.
Okay.
Christine.
And also in terms of, you mentioned the stages, the education, the importance of that, the internal stakeholders, who is the project sponsor in this case? Do you have a corporate development department? Where does innovation live? Sometimes it's in one department, sometimes it's across many. And so how do you get the buy-in that you need, the trust internally, so to speak, to go to a trustless system? All these stages, when you work from a corporate side, and we've all been there, where we worked with a startup who didn't deliver potentially, that it was not able to handle, the scale, the speed, whatever it was. Sometimes corporate development departments are burned. And so you have to really pick, look at your needs state. Do you need speed, reliability, scalability, efficiencies? Some, chains like Algorand offer all of those things as a quick promotion, but you really do need to make sure it's purpose fit for your business. You need to also look at the projects building on the chain, because there's often a lot of synergies of projects being able to work together. And what's really exciting that's been happening in that last 2 or 3 years is you might find a great project that is on a chain that might not offer all the things you need, but many projects are now, and many applications are going cross-chain. So you get many of those benefits. And again, this is, part of this ecosystem, some of the parts that the stronger the ecosystem can offer you, it can offer a suite of applications for your enterprise. But that internal buy-in process, the time it takes, the prioritization or deprioritization of innovation projects, those are tough decisions. And I've been on the both sides of that, where you watch your project kind of, going down the list, depending on the budget, depending on, maybe who is leading the team at a given time, who the favorites. So all of these things, you have to be really patient as you are working this through. The change management element is significant, but the flip side being, if you're not able to test and move with these markets, you will slowly be disintermediated yourself, right? That this is a really disruptive technology, and now with AI really hitting all the news headlines and becoming adopted, there's also opportunities to combine the best parts of AI with blockchain. So it's really up to an enterprise to keep pace with these innovations and get in. It's never too late, but well, it might be soon. So you really need to be and trust. You need to look at a leadership team, look at the foundation, look at how long they've been doing this, look at their tech, and really get to know all the internal touch points that will help your developers, because that's a huge piece of it. That's the day-to-day, right? When I was at another blockchain, we were working with a large financial services entity. And so developers in a corporate environment are not maybe used to GitHub or checking the updates and the runtime of a blockchain. And so there's a lot more communication that needs to happen between the project and the enterprise. And so there's learning on both. And the project on the blockchain side or the emerging tech side needs to learn patience. And then the devs internally actually really need to up their game. And then finally, it really is from an internal point of view, corporate reputation. We talked about positioning yourself as an innovative enterprise, but also being able to recruit and retain top talent. Otherwise, they're all going to go and find an AI project to be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Christine, in fact, you straddle on to the second part of what I was going to ask. So part of that has been answered, but we can go through it a little bit more in detail. So once we have identified, let's say an enterprise has identified that the blockchain solution is good for me for a particular pain point or for XYZ, right? Now I'm going into the market to look out for the optimal blockchain platform for my problem, right? So as an enterprise, what are the key considerations? You did mention about the team, you mentioned about the developments which are happening and stuff. I'll come to that community and tech part a little bit later on. But could you just list out, either of you could list down some of the metrics, the factors and the metrics, which if I as an enterprise am scouting around for a blockchain solution, what are the things that I need to look at? Like what kind of blockchain, for example, a public or a private blockchain, what infrastructure, what am I looking at for the scale and the flexibility, for example, for that matter? How do I go about it?
May I, Christine? So, yeah, so, this discussion had gone into this with this public-private blockchain so many times. And being more of a purist in this blockchain space, I have sometimes been, I think, not fair to the private blockchain platforms when they come in, because I call them privileged databases, nothing more than that. The reason why I call a private blockchain, because it is the purpose of blockchain is transparency. Purpose of blockchain is to be able to leverage things. Purpose of blockchain is openness. Purpose of blockchain is to get people more, of course, within the regulatory framework. I'm not even suggesting that we should not have things like that. But this whole closed mindset of, hosting something on my own, writing, having the governance, having the consensus mechanism under my own control, kind of defies the core premises of what blockchain is all about. All these things that you're talking about, like, data integrity. Now, if you have control on your own node, you can do whatever you want. It's no longer a blockchain. It's just a database, which is kind of much more better. You have smart contracts and other things built in. So, I mean, I might be a bit biased from the very onset because of my, this whole the idea of blockchain, the whole philosophy of blockchain was to provide social justice. Now, if I'm very closed, then we have a bit of a problem. Now, public blockchains face a lot of, initial I've had a lot of explaining to done to many organizations because they feel, okay, now are we playing in cryptos? Are we going to be doing something with cryptocurrency is banned? How can I pay people? Right. So it's that's where we have to kind of come in and tell them that, this whole crypto business is very different, right? If you go to Amazon and you take a server, right, you pay for the server space. Over here you pay for a transaction. We have mechanisms to be able to get you to pay in rupees, and then the transaction fee would be taken care of. You don't have to. You're transferring assets here, not transferring cryptos to people. We are transferring information, right? There is a transaction cost involved in that, and you will be able to. And in fact, the company which is on ramp, which kind of turns rupees to the tokens for you to be able to have access to the platform, is a Bangalore based company. So that's kind of a few explanations that I have to do. But on top of that, once I've kind of crossed that piece of public private blockchain, the other things that we need to look at is performance of a blockchain. How, are you looking to have lots of transactions, or are you looking for a huge transaction throughput? What is the kind of performance that you're looking for in your blockchain? What is the kind of scalability that you're looking for? Enterprises, when we are looking at a more public oriented kind of an application, which is launched by a small company doing different kinds of things to directly kind of company to consumer kind of a model. But enterprises would want to make sure that when we do a transaction, the transaction is final. It's not that I have to wait for, say, 5 minutes to be able to get a confirmation that my transaction is final, or hey, your transaction failed, why don't you try one more time? So these are some considerations that you need to make sure. Of course, security is non-negotiable in a decentralized world. What is the kind of governance model? We've seen a lot of things where governance is a bit, iffy. You don't know who's kind of going to make changes in the protocol. How are the changes? By the way, a public blockchain, any kind of change that you have to do is not on the whims and fancies of one organization, but the people who hold an equity on the platform. And how is that kind of managed? Is that a transparent process? Is this platform interoperable? This is a question which I keep getting all the time. Is, if I don't like you, I mean, I've had people telling me, like, even before they meet me for the first time, if I don't like you, I said, at least that is, you're giving me a signal that you like me now. That's fine. Okay. So if I don't like you in the future, can I move to another platform? Or if there is something else in another platform, can I be able to talk to that? These are some very important things that you need to look at. And one most important thing that people miss in this whole process of performance, interoperability, is the cost factor. So if we are able to kind of somehow map or kind of simulate what are the number of transactions you are able to do, and we are able to do a cost benefit analysis between different platforms, that would be an ideal starting point for an enterprise to be able to choose a public blockchain.
And one other way, sorry, just one last point on that. Another way to look at like the public versus private is to look at, 20 years ago, the proprietary software systems and content management systems that were used for websites, whether it was media or e-commerce, versus an open source, right? Versus a WordPress or a Drupal. And so those entities that really were very wed and loyal to their proprietary systems, there's no way you can keep up with the pace of innovation and change that you can with an open source, where you have a community of developers who are constantly iterating, constantly testing, and then you get to benefit from those tools and apps that are built on the tech. And also we saw this at different media companies where after a while the devs don't want to work on a proprietary system because they can't take those skills with them. Right. So basically your own skills become stale, and you not only the company slows down its pace, but also the employees are a little bit limited in their future capabilities and employment opportunities. So it's something to think about across your organization, and where it's getting increasingly competitive and remote work and global talent pools. You really need to make sure that you're offering a complete start to finish.
But where does the differentiator come in? Like, where is the moat then? When you're using, let's say, the same protocol, for example, for a same solution, supply chain identity management or XYZ, how does an entity get its differentiator then as compared to its competitors?
speed to getting, implementation for one. It really is doing your research or testing your decision on which chain, maybe within that chain, which partners you'd like to add. The holy grail is having 2 or 3 projects within an ecosystem that can help you really 10x your business. So that how quickly that decision is made, what resources you'll be able to devote to it, what you have internally, how long it's going to take you to ramp up the education internally, your developer resources to be able to maintain and continue building on this tech. There's quite a few things that'll, and also there's just many ways to implement a chain and the technology and the benefits. So, whether that's we talked a little bit about supply chain and traceability and, agriculture and food industry and farm to fork and all these interesting buzzwords. It's really figuring out where, for instance, that supply chain differentiator can be done quickly, deciding which aspects of the business you want to transform, and then continuing to really stay on top of it and see where you can max it out, because blockchain never stops. The education needed and the absolute speed is very exciting, but needs a bit of dedication to continue to keep your team in the loop.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about blockchain as a service from some specific vendor, right? So that comes for a certain use case, it is given to a particular entity, and then, as you rightly mentioned, the implementation and how it goes about serves as a differentiator. Nikhil, coming back onto the public-private thing, one last question on that, on the scalability. You were talking also about the trilemma there. You rightly mentioned, like in a blockchain, of course, because it's decentralized, that's the essence and all that stuff. But most often when we talk about enterprise blockchain, people talk about it as a private blockchain or a permission blockchain, right? How does the scalability come into the picture when we're talking about a public blockchain for an enterprise?
In fact, scalability is best be captured by a public blockchain. A private blockchain would require to have a lot more nodes, and the cost of operational running nodes is very high. Now, when you talk about enterprises, I just want to I'm sorry, this might be a connected point, but not exactly directly answering what you are saying, is enterprises can still have applications which would limit access to people who have to, even in a public blockchain, by the way. A public blockchain doesn't mean that your applications are open to everybody. Right? A public blockchain means that it is open, anybody can work on that platform. But if you could have applications which could have identity management solutions and secure identity management solutions to be able to access the application. So that at least that part is there. But coming to this whole aspect of scalability, scalability is much more easily available, easily accessible in a public blockchain, which is built for enterprise. And I don't mean to be advertising for Algorand here, because I will, because Algorand is an enterprise grade application. You will be able to get a confirmation of your transaction less than in about 2.9 seconds. We have about 10,000 transactions per second. So even if you have a blockchain-based validation system, sometimes we joke, like, you have a camera which actually takes a picture of you and goes to the blockchain and validates to be able to open the door. Algorand would still be a great blockchain platform for you to be able to implement that, because it's just 2.9 seconds of that's the max. And access of information, to be able to read information is free, to be able to write information is 0.01 algo transaction cost, which again is way cheaper than any other competing platforms. Even if your smart contract is complex, doesn't really matter. So these are some things which some organization will say, oh, I have my own node, but then what is the cost of running a node? Right? What if that node goes down? What if you want to have other people come in? In fact, I'll just quote without kind of naming a person. This is exactly what they told me. In an enterprise world, we will eventually graduate to a public blockchain. We are in private blockchain right now. So yes, of course, why don't you start with graduating to a public blockchain right from the very onset, rather than trying it out on a private blockchain? Because it's just the fear. I'm being very honest. It's just probably the fear that people feel that what if my data goes out? But if you design it right, if you know what you're doing, you should not have that problem.
Yeah, that's great. One more question here before I move on to the next part about the key challenges. Another aspect, I guess, is as an enterprise, one would also look about the integration into the legacy systems, right? So how does one go about it? That would be another factor, if I'm not mistaken. I would put it pretty high on my antenna if that were the case.
Yeah. Now, see, integration with legacy systems, so there are different ways of looking at it. Now, if your legacy system is a database backed system, which is what most of them would be, the only thing which comes into play is that if there is this legacy system in the intermediary through which you are pulling in data to be able to claim something in the decentralized world, the impact goes less, right? So sometimes it is a good idea. I mean, it depends on what is your purpose here. But suppose, we have some kind of we had it working with an entity, and, I can't name them yet because we're still in the working process with them, pretty big house in India. And they wanted to kind of pull data from their legacy system to do ESG reporting. Right, and data was in a static state in their legacy system. So when we had some discussions with them, we told them, if your data is in a static state in your legacy system, it can very well be manipulated, but you need blockchain at the end to be able to do ESG reporting. They did realize that, and they said, okay, you know what, we're going to take the legacy system to do other things for us. It's not necessarily only for ESG reporting. It's their transactional system, but they would connect the IoT devices directly over to the blockchain. So that is a different kind of use case. But when we talk about legacy systems and interacting with legacy systems, it is just basically making sure that the applications, the dApps that we are building, have the right kind of apps, have the right kind of interfaces, and we understand what exactly we are trying to do with the legacy system. If the legacy system is just an informational system that we are looking for, then I would recommend that you go to the source rather than go through the legacy system. But if there is another kind of a business logic that we are trying to build with the legacy system, then it's just like another application connecting to the legacy system. We have to make sure the interfaces are safe. We have to make sure that the data is secure. And since in blockchain we don't necessarily store data, you do have the ability to store data, but it's generally you're advised to have only small pieces of data which you absolutely have to store. Then you can store. We do have something which is called a block storage in a smart contract. So if you're doing a representation of the data, then I don't think you're going to risk exposing anything in the legacy system. Your blockchain application would not necessarily be a backdoor for anybody to attack your legacy system, if that's the concern of organization from a security perspective. And legacy system integration could be any other integration that we have.
Yeah, because apart from security, it is also how I would perceive it as a migration to another system. So it's not just a click of a button that it goes, right? So when I'm adopting a blockchain solution, I view it as in two parts. One is like when it is complementing, working as a complementing technology. So for example, in my financials, payroll or tax reporting or whatever financial reporting, I am using it to add in transparency, auditability, etc. So I'm using this as a complementary technology. But if I were to make, and I think that would be the low-hanging fruit, as compared to something in which I do a blockchain-based solution for a user-specific or domain-specific application. And when I'm doing that, then that thing about phasing out my legacy system and getting this one in is going to be a very, very, what should I say, a tricky problem and very tiresome or whatever you can call it, a problematic stuff, right? So that's when we look at the integration with the legacy system, and then slowly I'm going to phase it out. Otherwise, it becomes a nightmare to handle the two things in parallel if I'm using that as a specific case. So that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, so I mean, usually organizations phasing out a legacy system would require a lot of, as Christina had kind of highlighted, it requires a whole change management, who's kind of owning it, innovation, communication, stakeholder buy-in. Usually the integration with the legacy system should be in places where the legacy system has some kind of a disconnect. So if a legacy system is incapable or is not efficiently doing certain things, that is the point you should integrate a Web3 solution to be able to give it some boost, right? Because you can't go to an organization and say, hey, you know what? We just found decentralization. Let's move everything over to decentralization. They're going to buy it. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's never the intent also. It's going to be a step-by-step process. We have to get started with getting them to first understand the value. So in one place where they're not efficient, they lack certain things, if we bring in a Web3 which complements actually a legacy system rather than which is
Replaceable.
looking to kind of replace, then it would make a lot more sense. And then the communication and other things would, and sometimes also running certain things, like I gave you this example of data storage, and in fact having that data connect directly over to the blockchain, then you will be able to compare that this data in my legacy system for ESG reporting and this data in a blockchain system for ESG reporting are two very different things, right? So that might replace some archaic or old business processes, but I think starting with complementing would be the best approach to get started with, in my opinion.
Thanks. I've just got a reminder that we are overshooting our time. So what I would just, I'll take up some of the questions here. 1 second from the chat. So there is one question from Mohit, who's talking about relay nodes restrict control transactions. How can Algorand decentralize it?
Thank you, Mohit, for talking about. So Algorand has an architecture. The current architecture of Algorand is that we have validator nodes, which are basically where the consensus is happening, and then the validator nodes, once they have kind of come to a consensus, use nodes which is on the outside, which are called relay nodes, uh, uh, which kind of broadcast this information. These relay nodes could have something which would have the whole instance of the blockchain, or could just relay information. And based on what he's talking about, in many ways, we do realize that that is possibly it is decentralized, but it is not a pure form of decentralization. So we are slowly coming up, and that is going to be in our roadmap for 2024 with a peer-to-peer gossip network. So essentially, the relay nodes would be redundant. Eventually, the relay nodes would be used to just accelerate certain things, but then all these nodes that we have would be able to communicate with one another directly without the need of relay nodes. So that is definitely in our roadmap. Thank you for highlighting that, and we are already working on it.
So you're one up on that, huh? Okay. Thanks, Nikhil. And then there is one question from Abhijit. Are there any implementations of blockchain which are available to the retail consumers? It could be in any market, FMCG, pharma, food and snacks, particularly when it is not realized by the customer that it is the power of blockchain working for them. And examples are welcome and appreciated. So blockchain in the retail consumer.
I would look at whole chain. It's traceability, food safety. There's quite a few things there, anything from agriculture, fishing industry, anything right up to the consumer. And you can actually see how they have really outlined their ability to work with suppliers, tracing that product, that ingredient. They also work with cosmetic companies, very retail focused. Getting back to the sustainability, the reputation of a corporation. So they are a great example to look at in a couple of those industries.
Thank you.
And just one more, we have a company called LW3. They actually won a pitch competition in the Impact Summit also. They're a SAM-based company in India, and they have also have a traceability solution, a tamper-proof. They built some very interesting things, a low cost to get in, and they have a that traceability solution for enterprises to be able to kind of enterprises or businesses. Like, if you are a handicraft business and you want to make sure that your business is able to demonstrate its authenticity, you will be able to put a tag there, and that tag cannot be manipulated. And by scanning the tag, you will be able to know the provenance of the product. So they are doing that for Asamti, and they were in the news. And in fact, Asamti that's exported in Canada is now actually using their tags. We also have FDP Connect, which is based out of Hyderabad. I think I mentioned about them. But they might not be in the retail sector, but they are more on the import-export side of business, where the bill of lading and the transfer of ownership electronically is being done. So these are two readily available solutions which these businesses can look at.
Right. Thank you, Nikhil and Christine. That was very insightful and I would say engaging. And thanks for your share and your time. And thanks a lot, audience, for tuning in and making the session more rich by your questions and by your engagement and by your presence. So I guess it's time for us to wrap up. We have already exceeded the time, but it was interesting. And thank you once again. And
Thank
if
you,
you do
Meenu.
have
Thank you.
any questions, I'm referring this to the audience. If you have any questions, you could write into matrix at tiebangalore.org for any further queries. So I repeat the email ID as matrix, matrix, at tiebangalore, bangalore.org. So if there are any further queries, you could direct them there. Thanks a ton, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
You too.
Night.